Okay, let's start. Welcome to this month's Culinary Hour. We're going to cover India today, so if you want to take a look at your handouts, I'll start with the brief history of India. Indian cuisine encompasses over 5,000 years of history, a multitude of settlers with different belief systems. Various regions and religions make up the cultural fabric of the food. Many areas within India that have its own cooking methods, spices, and local ingredients. I'll get to more in depth when I cover the recipe. Hindu and Muslim are the most dominant religions that have influenced Indian cuisine. Hindu vegetarian culture is widely practiced. Adversely, the Muslim tradition is the most dominant in the cooking of meats. Typical dishes include kormas, which is curry. I'll stop right here for a second. Sometimes when you call a recipe for curry, a lot of people think that when you go to the store, curry is a spice. That's not the case at all. Curry is a combination of spices. So when you're buying that curry that's labeled curry in the store, it's that factory made their own curry powder. Usually, traditionally, in a curry, you're going to have turmeric, which is going to render that nice, I'll show you later, right here, nice yellow color to your food, kind of like a mild peppery spice. Turmeric is actually a rhizome, a member of the ginger family. So that's always encompassed in a curry with usually cloves, coriander, sometimes cardamom, chili powder. So when you go to the store and you buy curry, that's not one spice. It's a combination of things that the factory thought that was their curry. So it's always better to make your own, obviously. Dargisi kaftas are meatballs. Biryani is a layered meat and rice dish. And favorite dish is prepared in a clay oven or tandoor. Stop there again. I was going to make tandoori chicken today, but it's kind of typical. A tandoor is based upon a tent. That's the name of the oven. Tandoori cooking is not a dish either. You have tandoori chicken, you have tandoori, whatever. They make naan in tandooris. But as a tandoor is a nice clay oven, about yay big. It gets very hot. What they do is they put wood chips in there. It gets smoking really hot, and they bury it in the ground and cover it. You don't want to touch it. And they put the meat on skewers, put it on top of the coals, and cover it and let it go. So that's tandoori cooking usually. Usually the naan, the bread, which actually isn't indigenous to India. It comes from Afghanistan, but they got that from the Afghanis. They take the dough and they'll slap it on the sides of the tandoori oven. So while that meat is cooking, so while it's done, the meat gets pulled out and the bread is done at the same time. You just take the skewer and eat it like that. So that's what tandoori cooking is actually. In the south of India, dishes are typically rice-based with an accent of a thin soup called rasam. Coconut is an important ingredient in southern Indian cuisine as well. The recipe today is very characteristic of southern India that we're making today. Portuguese, Persians, and British made important contributions to the cuisine as well. For example, the British introduced tea, or chai, to India, and is favorite drink of most Indians today. North India was influenced by the Mughal dynasty until the British replaced them in the 1800s. From the Mughals, they were introduced to saffron and rich gravies made of pureed nuts and cream and naan bread. See, that came from the Afghanis, actually. South Indian food has distinctive rice recipes and is eaten at all meals. Western states all have unique food experiences based upon the majority religion of that area. Coastal regions, obviously, will utilize a variety of seafood with additions of red chilies and coconut. From the east to the west, Indian cuisine is only bound by its locale, but its flavors are boundless. So it's kind of like American regional cuisine. Any part in America you go to, based upon the culture that has settled there, immigrants, like Northeastern America is much different than Southeastern America, than Southwestern America. That's the same as India. So many cultural influence over 5,000 years. But it's really divided into north, south, west, and east typically. But each state, whatever the religion is, you're going to have that influence in the cuisine. But for the most part, there's certain standard elements through all of it. So we're going to go through the recipe first. If you go to the third and fourth page. We're going to be making jhinga shordar, which is called a shrimp curry. We talked about butter before. Let me show you this for a second. If you take normal butter and you want to saute with it, what happens is butter is made of milk fat, milk proteins, and moisture. This right here, well, it got warm a little bit, but it gets very crystal clear if you want to pass it around. This is ghee. Basically, the same as clarified butter. What you want to do is just take regular butter, unsalted, put it in a pan, let it simmer for about 25 minutes. What that does is, you'll see the wisps of moisture coming up from the top. You're evaporating the water, and the milk solids will separate to the bottom of the pan. So what you're left is pure butter fat. And what that happens is, if I took fresh butter, unclarified, put it in a pan, it would burn because of the protein solids. What clarification does, increases so I can do a high saute on this. You don't have to worry about it burning. So you elevated the smoke point of that oil by far. So I can put it on, instead of like melting in butter on medium heat, I can put this on medium high heat, and it won't burn the butter at all. So it's worth the time. Like when you make baklava too, when I make that, I always clarify my butter because it's going to be in the oven for a long time. You don't want to burn the pastry. Sometimes you get little flecks of brown in your pastries if you don't do that, and that's the protein that you didn't clarify. So you want to make sure the proteins are out and the moisture is out. You want pure butter fat, and that's what we got here.
Well, what about the protein in the meat? Would that interfere with that? If you
No, not at all. What happens is you're going to sear that. What you're going to do is want to get a high, medium, a high oil-based heat to saute everything in. So once that oil gets very hot, you're actually searing that meat. Some of the meat will obviously stick to the pan, but it's not going to affect the oil at all. It won't affect it at all. Yep. You're going to incorporate in the sauce later on. I'll show you. Let's see. We have onions, medium diced, coconut, finely chopped. Now, this is not sweetened coconut you buy in the store. Got a fresh coconut, shelled it, I grated it, and just toasted it a little bit and dried it out. So you want unsweetened coconut in this. It's not a dessert, so regular coconut. Now here's my curry. Ground cloves, cardamom, bay leaves, cumin, turmeric, cayenne, and fresh garlic. So that actually is my curry right there. Now, some people add different things to them. If you add like cinnamon, black pepper, it can be called the garam masala, which is an Indian dish too, as well, another spice mix, but this is my curry for this particular dish. Fresh lemon juice. I use sour cream, fish stock, yogurt, and arrowroot to bind. Some people can use cornstarch. I don't particularly like cornstarch, only because it gets very gummy. Arrowroot is a thickener. It's derived from the arrowroot plant from South America, actually. So what happens is a high starch, and what they do is they shred the root and they dry it and make it into a powder. Now the difference between arrowroot and cornstarch is cornstarch you're going to have to come to a complete boil to get its maximum thickening. Arrowroot won't boil, but you can see it thicken right away. Okay, but you cannot cook it for too long because it will break and then you'll go soft again. So you get your thickening, but then you got to stop it once it starts to thicken. Because if it comes to a boil, you're going to lose it. You'll see. Let's see, yogurt fish stock and black tiger soup is what I use, and the ghee again. So we do a second saute here. I used 2125. If you go to the store, it says 2125 count. Sometimes you go to the store, you'll say U10, U15 on shrimp, 2125, 2630. That is the count of shrimp per pound, just so you know that. So obviously it goes U10, U15, you're getting 10 to 15 shrimp per pound. Those are big. So the next one is going to be 1620. Those are good for cocktail. Those are good for cocktail too. This means 2125 shrimp per pound. That's what that means. So whenever you go to the store and see that count, that's how many shrimp you're going to get per pound. So it helps you if you want to forecast how many people are coming over or whatever you can do. So you figure out like this particular dish, I just did three shrimp per people. So I did 120 shrimp in the original dish. Let's start with the medium heat. First thing I want to do is, first step is get my onions on. I'm basically going to quarter the recipe that's printed there. I'm going to add it to the one we already have because the original one was made for about 40 people. So. I think I covered this before. When you're doing a dice, leave that core end intact so it keeps the slices together. Okay? That way I can just go down. And the natural layers of the onion create the separation. I don't have to do too much of another dice. Okay. That's about one medium onion right there on a dice. And the recipe calls for sauteing onions first and then using them as a garnish. I like to leave the onions in as my sauce. Only because the fact that sometimes these are fried in butter and you get like that buttery film on the outside. Sometimes it leaches into your sauce and it has like a little separation, but I really have the flavor of the onion inside my sauce for a long period of time as it cooks. So I particularly don't follow that recipe using the onions as a garnish. I incorporate that as my sauce, so I will not take these out. First thing you're going to do is add the ghee. Now this is regular butter right now. I'll be getting like black smoke because right there the proteins are cracking. So now I can see. You can see I'll pour it. It's very clear. You can see it too. First thing is onions. Always season as you go. Sometimes with you, when you see chefs flipping like that, it's only a good idea. You never really want to do that. You only do that if you see your oil is too hot. You really never want to remove the pan from the heat source because as soon as you add the product, the temperature dies. But I know the oil got a little too hot and the onions started to brown a little bit too much, so it helps us to lift it up, like it is a little bit now, and flip it. and then it gets rid of some of the heat intensity of the onion itself. Sometimes they do it for show. It's really not a good idea to do it unless the only purpose is really if you want to eliminate some of the heat in your pan. You know, I'm looking for a stage what they call translucency. The onions, fine dice, you can almost like see through the edges of the onion. It was very glassy looking. So at this point, I'm gonna add the rest of my ingredients. I'm gonna cut this up first. Hey, let's go for a chili pepper. Something you really like it spicy. I chose a poblano. It's very mild in heat, so it's not gonna like really kill you because I'm adding also a touch of cayenne pepper to this as well. Okay, now at this point in time I add the garlic and the other seasonings. Garlic I never add in the beginning, obviously, because there's a fine line between toasted garlic and burnt garlic. If I was to add this first, by this point in time this garlic cloves be nice and black and brown, and this should be shot. Because once you get that bitter taste, you can't do anything to save it. So I always add at the end. Well, the last thing to saute. And then I add fresh ginger root. Typical of a lot of Indian and Asian dishes are ginger and garlic and some form of onion as the base of your sauce. So you start to smell it now. Very familiar with like Chinese food, things like that too. Most Americans use like carrots, onion, and celery. They use ginger, garlic, and scallion usually for the most part. Southeast. I'm not really looking to caramelize the veg that much. I just want to get the raw flavor out of there and evaporate some of the moisture. So then I'm going to go with the addition of my other spices. I have, this is what my curry is. I have clove, cardamom, cumin, and cayenne pepper. It's always good to put them in before the liquid because, especially if they're dried spices, when they hit the heat, you're going to accentuate the oils in there. You want to bring out that flavor in the spice. Here's my turmeric, touch of sugar. At this point in time, I'm going to add the fish stock. This is basically the shells that I took from the shrimp that are rendered in some water and some vegetables. That's all it is. I always save the shells. Now this also gets rid of all the pieces that are sticking on the bottom of the pan and incorporate your sauce too. Let that come to a simmer, and I add my coconut and bay leaf. Now this is going to take a little while to introduce, so what I'm going to do over here, speed up a little bit. This pan is basically for sauteing the shrimp only. So I'm going to add a little more of the ghee. Make sure the pan is nice and hot. These are the shrimp right here. Shell off, devein, tail off. These are 21, 25. That's the size you get. Some people use it for cocktail size too. Pretty decent size. What you kind of look for the shrimp, it's going to get opaque and they immediately turn pink. The outside flesh will turn pink. You don't want to overcook them, you don't want to undercook them either. But you know when they're done, immediately when they hit the heat, they start changing that color, that nice pink. All right, over here, this was simmering to the point where I want to extract the flavor of the bay leaves and also soften up that pepper a little bit. And it's pretty much at that stage now. So what I have over here is that arrowroot that's called for in the recipe. I just made a big, like a pot of it. It's what they call a slurry. Anytime you add a powdered starch to a liquid medium, it's called a slurry. That's your thickening agent. So this is arrowroot dissolved in some of the fish stock. I'm going to add a little at a time. When I see it thickening, I'm going to stop, and then I'll fold in my sour cream and yogurt. You don't need too much of this. I need more than that. You can start to smell the curry. This place is melting together. You see my sauce? As soon as it starts to come to a little bit of a simmer, I'll stop because I don't want arrowroot to lose its thickening capacity. If I overboil it, it will do that. This is good. So at this point, I'm looking for a sauce. See how it thickens up nice like that? That's from the arrowroot addition. Now, at this point in time, I like to turn it off. I do this as a insurance policy because sometimes if you're going to make a sauce that's cream-based, obviously we have yogurt and sour cream here. If this comes to like a rolling boil, you're going to separate your sauce, and once again the proteins will separate, and it looks like there's dots of like white milk inside your thing, so you don't want to do that. You want to come to a boil. What you want to do is, as soon as this comes to full thickening, you take this off and then you fold that in later on. That way, as long as you know the sauce doesn't come to a boil, that will never break, and your sauce will stay creamy. Because you also can break, when I say break the sauce, it means the milk proteins will separate from the water or the fat, and so like once they separate like that, you can never bring them back together again. So you want to make sure that they stay together. You only do that by making sure your sauce does not come to a full boil. At this point, I'll add the sour cream. The yogurt. What happens too, you're going to see, especially in tandoori cooking, Indian culture use a lot of yogurt in their marinades. It serves a couple purposes. Yogurt has a natural acid to it from the lactobacillus that's in there. Plus, it's kind of neutral for the most part, and it makes it, like I explained before, when you're cooking meat in the tandoori oven, you want to make sure your seasonings stay on that meat because it's thick. It has a great affinity for holding on your spice mixes, your curries, and it doesn't like render too much of a harsh taste to your final product. So yogurt is typically used in a lot of marinades for meat in Indian cooking. This is basically the final sauce right here. Now at this point in time, I'm going to add the shrimp in here into the sauce. And what I'm doing is also added some of the rendered juice from the shrimp. As it heats up, it's going to take on, impart some of the flavors from the sauce. All right, it's pretty much done. Quick saute for the most part. That's what you get. So I'm going to follow kind of southern Indian tradition. Rice is served at all meals, in particular basmati. You'll see it in the store sometimes you see jasmine rice, basmati rice. They're both long grain rice, is very similar. You can substitute one for the other, but the difference is jasmine rice has like more of like a floral nuance to it. That is made in, that's really in southeastern Asia they make that. The foothills of the Himalayas is where they make the basmati rice in northern India. So that's kind of it's typical of Indians use the basmati rice. Use it. And I just made a straight rice peel off with a little ginger. Any questions? Yes. Yes.
Okay, you said you made the fish stock out of the shells.
Yes.
And you added vegetables to
Yeah.
add to it now. How long do you cook the shells, and what vegetables do you add to the stock so it's more of a fishy taste instead of a vegetable stock?
Well, the good thing about that is when you're using the shells of like hard shell, like shrimp or lobster,
Yeah.
that's pretty intense, that flavor.
Okay.
So you need much. So we want neutral vegetables. So particular, you can add even like some lemon to the water,
Okay.
lemon juice and some of the zest, celery, onions, carrots, lighter vegetables.
Oh, okay.
Strictly, meat pot, sometimes leeks, I use white vegetables, turnips, things like that. Parsnips are good too
Okay.
for a fish stock too.
Okay.
But you're not going to get too much of a fishy stock like that because it's not really a fatty fish. You're only dealing with the shells.
Okay.
Whereas if you made like a stock from, I don't know, like bluefish bones or something like that, which I wouldn't recommend, then you get that intense fatty fish because they're very lean. So you're basically dealing with the fresh, just the flavor of the shellfish alone.
How long do you cook the shells for?
Shrimp stock, you don't have to do more than 40 minutes.
Oh.
Like veal, like as opposed to beef or veal, beef is like 8 hours, veal is like 6, chicken is like 4 hours. Fish stock's only 45 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Doesn't take much to render the bones of the fish.
Okay, good.
And you don't want to boil it either. General simmer. Once you boil it, your stock goes cloudy. So you see the bubbles just coming to the surface, leave it at that temperature. Never boil your stock.
Okay.
No question? All right.
The coconut, I'm
Yes.
sorry. You said you used a fresh coconut.
Yes.
And then you dried it?
Hmm?
How so?
You shred it, you spread it in a sheet pan, parchment paper, and low oven at 200 degrees. You know, it depends on how fine you shred it. This is very finely shred, so you get the coconut meat and you grate it really fine. About 200, I think it was 200 degrees for about 40 minutes, 45 minutes. Is it?
And can you store it, like if you did the whole coconut?
Sure. You store it, especially dry is even better because you eliminate the moisture. Anytime you eliminate moisture for something, you're extending the storage life of it
Okay.
because you don't have any bacteria and stuff like that. So, but it can't be sweetened dessert coconut, as you use the fresh coconut and do that. The reason why I do that, this calls for fresh coconut. What I like to do is add the fresh coconut, but I like to dry any product as much as I can when I add to a sauce. Why? Because when you're drying it, first of all, you're intensifying the sugars of that product. You're getting rid of the water. So when you introduce it to your sauce, it's actually taking the flavors of your sauce because the water is not there anymore. It's anhydrous. It's looking for something to moisturize and come back, you know? So I just eliminate the water for the most part, introduce it into a liquid medium that's already flavored, and that way it intensifies your sauce that way. So anytime you're cooking, eliminate water for the most part. That's why I like roasting vegetables instead of boiling them. I mean, all the vitamins go up when you roast them. You can taste the difference between a roasted carrot versus a boiled one. The boiled carrot's just like, you know, it's kind of like mushy and things like that. The roasted one has that intense sugar flavor. Why? Because the water's gone. So you add that to your sauce instead of like a plain carrot, and then you got the nice roasted flavor in your sauce now too. So. Yes.
All right, arrowroot is used to as a thickener.
Yes.
Okay, versus cornstarch.
You could use cornstarch too here, but
Yeah, but does the arrowroot work better for particular meats, fish? Does it like intensify flavors depending on what it's used for?
no, it's very neutral. What it has to do with is a finished product. Sometimes if you're using arrowroot, you see in pies too, they get that shiny, that goopy looking, like, you know, texture to them. Arrowroot doesn't have like a high shine to it, high sheen to it. Arrowroot, you do not have to boil and wait for your liquid to boil for it to thicken. It's a natural product, and something like this, like cornstarch now, you hear like these GMOs now in the market. All corn now is GMO, so GMO based. So arrowroot is not. You don't have to deal with any genetically modified organisms because all the corn nowadays is. That's another plus for it. If you're looking at that, I particularly don't, but doesn't matter to me. But it's the final product, the appearance of it, and the cooking medium too. You don't have to make it come from the boil. So it aids in the quick cooking. So no, totally natural product too. Arrowroot is the plant. Yep. Yes.
So the arrowroot, you wouldn't get lumps and stuff? Or it's-
You would. The whole idea is if I took the arrowroot or cornstarch and I dumped it right into a hot sauce,
Yeah.
you get lumps. The thing is, when you're making a slurry, you add either like your powdered starch mix, whether it's tapioca starch, potato starch, cornstarch, arrowroot, anything. Always add your cold liquid. What I did is I use the cold fish stock. So what that does, you're inundating each starch fiber with water already. So when it hits the heat, it's not going to clump together because it's already surrounded by water. Nothing. That's it. Want to eat?
Yeah.
Give it a taste? All right. Go.
Thanks, Eric. You're the best.
Best.
Thank you,
So
Chef.
thank you.
Next month we'll probably do Russia. I think
Russia.
Yep.